When your family begs you to go to a hot spring, you find a hot spring and get them to the hot spring. Yeah, well, it's too early in the season for that. So here we are at the Nimrod Hot Springs. I think that's what Sunny is gonna call me for the rest of the day, probably. She was not happy about it was a casual half mile with just nature sounds. Okay, in fairness, they were all honking at me, not you, so it's not always about you. All right, in this case, it was definitely 100% about me. I mean, with the exception of 80-mile-per-hour traffic running right next to you, it was just a casual hike. There wasn't big weeds or anything like that. It wasn't too bad. Brielle, it wasn't too bad. We could have been walking through this stuff the whole time. It would have been better with real shoes for the girls. But
the hot spring looks like it's full of fun stuff.
We'll see. It looked pretty blue to me.
Yay, you made it!
This is awesome, Brielle. You so come up there. Am I gonna fall?
Brandon was excited to take us to Montana because he considers it to be one of the most beautiful states in the country. It was the first time for the rest of us, and it ended up being a giant lesson in rolling with the punches. That's something a little bit easier for the boys in our family than the girls, but it is a reality of full-time travel. We planned to go to Glacier National Park, but when we arrived in Missoula at the end of May, most of the roads that far north were still closed due to snow. This also prevented us from spending time on the Clark Fork River. It cuts right through the middle of town, but dangerously high waters and a need for wetsuits kept us firmly on land. Additionally, the air quality was poor due to fires burning in Canada. Also, our campsite was right off the highway, so super loud. We were bound and determined to make the most of our time in Montana, however, so we decided to go to the famous carousel for Missoula. Over 100,000 hours of volunteer time went into its construction, and it contains the largest band organ in continuous use in the United States. Unfortunately, it too was broken down when we arrived. There is a small museum and workshop, and we were afforded the chance to look around and get a personal tour of the hand-carved ponies. The people were lovely, and while we didn't get to ride the famous carousel, we at least got to learn about it. The nearby Dragon Hollow playground also provided an opportunity to burn off some energy. Despite some disappointments, Brandon did get to play in the annual Maggot Fest rugby tournament. He looks forward to it each year and enjoyed reconnecting with his teammates from Denver. Our 15th wedding anniversary also landed right in the middle of our time here, so we celebrated with a nice meal and a trip to the tasting room at the Montgomery Distillery. Whiskey and gin are their specialties, But the ambiance, friendly locals, and even some non-alcoholic cocktails make this a worthwhile stop for anyone. I am making charcuterie. It's Friday, we're getting ready to leave tomorrow, and so we wanted to do something easy and fun because we're also gonna clean the whole camper, do like the deep clean stuff that you do like once a week in your house. So we're gonna do that before we go so that the camper is nice and clean when we arrive.
What's in that green box in the back?
These are microgreens from Farmer Matt at Pondy Produce.
Oh, yeah.
And just north of Denver, like Fort Collins area. And we picked this up from him. He's a harvest host. He also gave us some eggs and some honey. But we are gonna grow our own microgreens once we're finally in an area where we'll be for a while. We've been moving too much. And
For
so
all these salad eaters.
we didn't want to try growing anything, and then we moved the camper and lost them all. So we're gonna wait and do that at our next site because we'll be there a little bit longer.
Oh,
So.
and also I gave you dry wrapping.
Take two. So, yeah, we were talking in depth about the things that we need to check, and that made me think of checking the sound on the microphone to make sure that it was actually on. And
It wasn't.
guess what? It wasn't.
In the past, we've always gone on a trip and then gone home. We've always emptied everything, all the black tank, the gray tank, all of that, which meant that like if we were leaving on a Saturday, we would do all of that Saturday morning. But now that
That way, so
we're
it was completely empty.
yeah, that way there was no water, you know, because somebody might have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night or brush their teeth or whatever. We wanted everything totally empty when we went home so that when the camper went back into storage, it wasn't a big deal. Now that we're traveling and living in it, we obviously want, you know, a little bit of water in the tanks while we're traveling. We decided to experiment with getting ready the night before we go on the road. That way tomorrow, hopefully all we have to do is drink our coffee and then do the last few disconnecting things before we can hook up to the truck and get out of here a lot faster. And then I also cleaned the inside of the camper top to bottom. I really like things neat and clean. That is something that he knows I get really stressed if things are messy. And when we're getting ready to hit the road, you know, and we're gonna be driving and stuff, I don't want to get to our next site, set up, and then be surrounded by a mess everywhere. I just really don't like that.
So yeah, that's, I think, pretty much it of what we wanted to sort of go over. The, you know, highlight the process of what we're trying to do, tear down the night before. I think that's going to be really important for travel days, make it a lot easier. Hopefully we will see you in the morning at 10 o'clock.
Okay, we'll see.
Like and subscribe.